On this video, I would like to share the basic flow of thought of the book of Leviticus, Vayikra in Hebrew. So, as we look at the book of Leviticus, it was to be a code for the priests. It gives the instructions for the proper approach to and communion with God that was to be followed by the newly formed priestly kingdom and holy nation. The book is parallel to the Epistle of Hebrews in the New Testament as it shows the true approach to God under the era of the law, while Hebrews manifests it under the dispensation of grace. The book of Leviticus served as the immediate companion to Exodus. In the book of Exodus, the basic law had been given and the tabernacle erected. It was then necessary that laws be given to guide Israel in their worship in the tabernacle, and the book of Leviticus then served this purpose. Since the book then is a manual of Levitical ritual and worship, everything in the book contributes to that purpose. Even in the brief narrative notices, they are used to illustrate some aspect of the laws mentioned in Leviticus chapter 10, 1 to 2, for example. As we look at the book of Leviticus, the theme of the book is holiness. The book of Leviticus can be divided into two major sections: laws concerning approach to God or salvation, Leviticus 1 to 16. Then laws concerning a work with God or sanctification, Leviticus 18 to 27. The entire book deals with holiness, as a holy God seeks to communicate to a people who he seeks to make into a holy nation. To be acceptable before a holy God, they must first of all gain a proper approach to him. And then, having done this, they must continue walking and living a holy life. The first major section of the book, the author then begins with 5 offerings and their regulation. These typify, I think, as we look at the New Testament, the sacrifice of Christ on the cross. For example, as we think about it, the burnt offering typifies Christ offering himself without blemish to God for sinners. The meal offering, which is next discussed in chapter 2, speaks of the life of Christ in his perfect character. The peace offering in chapter 3 follows, which speaks of Christ as our peace and also as the one who creates peace between Jew and Gentile. The sin offering in chapter 4 is taken up next and typifies Christ on the cross in the sinner's stead, dying for his sins. The last of the offerings discussed is the trespass offering in chapters 5, 14 through 6, 7, which depicts Christ as the one who has taken care of the sinner's trespasses against God's law and against others. Following the 5 offerings, then, the book then seeks to regulate specific laws, and then immediately moves into a discussion of the priesthood in chapters 8 through 10. First, we have the consecration of the priest discussed in chapter 8, including uh, their washing, anointing, and their offering, the consecration of the priest. Second, their inauguration into office is described in chapter 9, including various offerings that attend the event and the ceremony that's involved in it. The book then moves immediately into a transgression among the priesthood, namely the strange fire of Nadab and Abihu. These are punished by God, and this then becomes a lasting judgment on all who try to approach God in an improper manner. The final discussion concerning the priests in chapter 10 deal with their separation and their food and sustenance. After describing the offerings then and the priesthood as necessary in approaching God, the author next discusses the observance of certain purification laws, which are also necessary in this approach. He discusses, for example, foods that are clean and unclean in chapter 11, laws concerning motherhood in 12, dealing with the period of motherhood and offerings of purification as well. He then discusses laws regulating leprosy, in which he includes the leprosy of persons, of garments, and of houses, and then concludes by discussing laws to govern personal uncleanness, both in men and in women. The first major section of approach then closes with the treatment of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, which must be observed annually as the Israelites would approach the Lord. This is in chapter 16. Chapter 16 then discusses this by setting forth the basis whereby expiation of sins was made and the cleansing of the priests that followed that. The chapter then concludes by making this an annual ordinance of approach to God or the nation. Beginning with chapter 17, the second major section of the book is then developed, which entails various laws regarding a walk with God on the part of the Israelites. This is their sanctification, we could say. The major section in this part of the book looks at laws regarding social matters, laws regarding moral matters, spiritual matters, laws regarding the priesthood, laws regarding the festivals or feasts, laws regarding additional duties and miscellaneous sins, laws regarding the land, and then finally, laws regarding vows and tithes. The section begins then with laws that concern moral matters, in chapter 17. Laws relating to blood and its sanctity, the unlawful marriages in 18, and unlawful lust in 18 as well are discussed. Next, laws regulating social matters are considered in 19, including such things as parents, the Sabbath, and the poor, theft, and decent behavior, etc. Following this, the book goes to spiritual matters and gives laws regarding such matters as idolatry, spiritism, obedience to God's statutes, etc. All of this in 19 and 20. The fourth major subsection of discussion concerns the priesthood in 21 and following, especially as it relates to their practices and to their sacrifices. In chapter 23, we come to a great chapter where we see 7 feasts given and discussed and the laws regarding their observance. This would be the yearly festivals. In the next chapter, various additional duties and miscellaneous sins are discussed. Furthermore, from there, the author discusses various laws that regard the land. In chapter 25, the Sabbath year and the year of Jubilee are both discussed, and in chapter 26, the conditions of blessing in the land are given over against the chastisement of disobedience. The chapter also pictures the future restoration of Israel. Followed then, finally, the book is concluded by giving laws regarding vows, devoted things, and tithes. So as we look at the book, if we were going to outline it, we could say in chapters 1 to 16, we have laws concerning approach to God. We have the 5 offerings, the burnt offering, the meal offering, the peace offering, and then we have the sin offering and the trespass offering. And we have laws that regulate these offerings. So this is all in that first section. We also have laws of purification in chapters 11 to 15. Then following that, this first section climaxed in the Great Day of Atonement in 16. Then we move to the second movement of the book, laws concerning a walk with God, or what we could call sanctification. And we have discussed a lot of this in the previous paragraph or two, laws regarding moral matters, laws regarding unlawful marriages, uh, laws regarding unlawful sexuality, and then we have laws regarding social matters such as holiness, parents, Sabbath observance, idolatry, the poor, uh, falsehood, oppression, tale bearing, the love of a neighbor, how that's needed, adultery, first fruit of trees, heathen customs, Sabbaths and sanctuaries, regarding the aged, how they're to be treated, strangers, etc. So there's just a lot of areas of social matters that are dealt with. Then following, as we said, the priesthood, laws that deal with what they should be doing in their practices, and laws regarding then feasts. We talked about chapter 23, where we have the festival of Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, the wave offerings, the trumpets, the Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles. Sort of a summary of the Jewish yearly feasts or festivals. And then, as we said, finally, laws regarding additional priestly duties and miscellaneous laws and conditions for blessing in the land in chapter 26, concluded by laws regarding vows and tithes at the end in chapter 27. So that's just a general summary of the flow of thought of the book of Leviticus. It is interesting that, again, Moses, as the author, the date around the time of the wilderness when Israel was sojourning in the wilderness, And as we said, the purpose of the book was to be a code for the priests, to teach them, and also to teach the nation Israel what the Lord wanted from them in the pursuit of holiness. So it's interesting. Leviticus was the book that in the Hebrew world, a young child, a young boy, when he was taught to read the Hebrew Bible, started with Leviticus. That's interesting. We tend to not pursue a book like Leviticus because it seems irrelevant to many, I think. But yet, as we get in and look at it, it had to do with what approach to God should look like and what a holy life in relationship to that at that time should look like. And probably the New Testament equivalent, or let's say if we were going to use a New Testament parallel, would be the book of Hebrews.